But first, the government's foreign criminals mess, you saw a little bit of it there, a grab out of Question Time today, is getting worse by the day. I tell you, as I watch Question Time today, you've got to wonder how on earth Immigration Minister Andrew Giles can survive.
The issue dates back to 2013 and existed for nearly a decade under the former government, who failed to fix it. And worse, they are playing politics as we get on with the job of fixing up the mess. I really do thank the Shadow Minister for this question and for his apparent newfound interest in legal matters. And I would encourage him to be briefed on the real legal issues going to these issues so that he can make a constructive contribution to community safety.
Last Friday, the competent duo of Giles and Home Affairs Minister Clare O'Neil briefed the media that the High Court was to blame for the likely release of hundreds more foreign criminals into the community. If this was an attempt at a reset and to regain the political narrative, it was an abysmal failure. Ministers blaming others for their problems is never a good look, especially when these two now have a consistent record of inattention to detail, blame shifting and incompetence. In the end, this is a mess entirely of Labor's making. The basic problem is the 50,000 boat people who came to Australia under Kevin Rudd and Julia Gillard, many of whom have exploited the system to remain here on bridging visas while their applications for asylum or appeals against being knocked back have wound themselves endlessly through the courts and tribunals. The regrettable reality is that any foreigner in Australia who applies for asylum, thanks to activist lawyers, lenient judges and numerous avenues of appeal, can stay here almost indefinitely, especially if their home country refuses to accept them as deportees. That's why it's imperative that governments maintain their vigilance against unlawful arrivals by boat and against allowing visitors from places that habitually put in asylum seeker claims. Right now, thanks to Labor's mismanagement, past and present, the scale of the problem is staggering. As the Australian newspaper reported over the weekend, there are currently another 872 foreigners in immigration detention. Awaiting deportation, many of them are criminals. There are some 7,600 failed asylum seekers currently in the community on bridging visas, expected to depart but unlikely to. And there's also a vast 41,000 rejected refugee claims currently before the Administrative Appeals Tribunal, unlikely to be approved, but likely to take many years to be heard and determined. And even if ultimately rejected, these people are unlikely ever to leave Australia. This is the ongoing legacy of Labor's border protection failures. Failures that the current Labor government shows no capacity whatsoever to resolve, mostly because too many Labor MPs don't think that a country like ours has a right to say no. Future court decisions are likely to rule that immigration detention cannot be indefinite, because that amounts to punishment effectively by administrative action, which means that we're likely to be stuck with most of the roughly 50,000 asylum seekers currently log-jammed in the system. Now, can you imagine how the people smugglers will be retailing that? Get to Australia, they'll say, by whatever means possible, because the system's so broken it'll bend over backwards to allow you to stay. And if you've got shocking crimes to your name, even better, because Australia won't deport you. Now, frankly, the system as it stands is broken. The system in Australia and the international conventions, the international law that sit behind it. If the government was fair income, it would conclude, as I have, that the current refugee definition is not fit for purpose. We are being played, and that makes us more vulnerable than ever at being exploited by people who will do whatever it takes to get here and live off our generosity, whether they are truly a refugee or not. I mean, why should someone be able to avoid deportation to a Middle Eastern country simply by claiming to be gay or claiming to have converted to Christianity? as I said more and more today, the whole thing is a racket, and any international convention that facilitates it should not be part of Australian law.